So welcome back, and in this video we're going to take a look at creating this bracket that I've named here. So what we're going to do, and this is going to be a two-part video, is that in the first part I will create the three primary views here, and in the second one, if you want to see how I create the isometric, I will do that in a separate video. So with this one, we're going to create the primary three views, and some of the things that kind of sticks out at me immediately is that you're going to see a couple of offsets. So I can see that surface here and this one here. And then I kind of locate, some of the stuff I need to know. So like this radius, we know that this radius is not labeled, but if we take a look at this back dimension, which is showing us as 60, that means that this has to have a radius of 30. So we don't have that dimension on there, but we're able to figure it out. So let's jump over to AutoCAD and begin to start. So one of the first things I like to do is go ahead and turn my grid off, and that's going to be this button here, or you can hit the Function key 7 button on your keyboard. So I'm just going to turn this grid off. And now I'm going to take a look at the drawing that I have, and I see that the overall length of this is sitting at 130. So I'm going to create a horizontal line that's 130 long. So I started by selecting the line command. You can see that mine is kind of having this rubber band effect. I want to create that line straight, so I'm going to use the ortho mode, which is Function key 8. So once I click that, you'll see that that line is locked. Now I can type in the number 130 and go ahead and hit enter and then escape. Okay, I'm just going to scroll out, and I'm using my mouse wheel here, my middle mouse wheel, just by scrolling it backwards. Now I'm going to create this line going up, and it has a height of 50. So I'm going to draw a line from this endpoint. Now remember that if your endpoints is not turned on, it should be this blue icon here that should be highlighted blue. And some of my running O snaps that are turned on are located here with the checks beside them. So I'm going to create that line. So I'm going to click this endpoint. I'm going to go up a height of 50. Then I'm going to come this direction, a height of 60. And then I'll just come down. Now I'll just make this line go past it. I don't really have to give it a distance right now. Next, I'm going to offset this line going up. So if we're following along on here, we took out the line that's labeled at 50. And the next one we're going to do is 60. And we use the 130 dimension. So the next thing I need to accomplish is this height. So I'm going to use two heights here. Going to be my next two things I'm going to do. I'm going to use this 15 and then the 25. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line up. I could use the offset command, but in this case I'm going to use copy. So I'm going to use copy. I'll select the object I want to copy. Then you have to hit the enter button. Select the base point, and since we're moving it at a distance, the base point is irrelevant, so I'll click here. Long as I'm going up, and once again, I do have my ortho turned on, which is this button here that's highlighted. So I'm going to aim it up. I'll type in 15, enter, and then I'll type in the 25. Okay, so now I have those two lines set. Next, I will use the offset command. I'll type in my distance, which is 13. And then I'm going to offset this line at 13. And let's offset this line at 13 going this way. All right, so everything that I need to do right now is just trim this out and finish it up. So instead of going through trimming this line a couple of times, I can go ahead and put the fillet on here, and that will go ahead and trim those lines the way I need it to. So let's go to fillet. Let's go ahead and set our radius. Number is 10, enter. And remember, with the fillet command, select the lines you want to keep. So I'm going to select this line and then this line. Okay, I'll hit escape after that. And then I will continue my line command, and I'm just going to close this off here in the front. And then I will use the trim command. And now I will trim these lines going upward. So I'm going to trim off this line, this one. And then I'll finally just trim off this point at the top. And it looks like I lost my line here at the front. I'll just recreate that one. Okay, so now I do have my shape, or the basic shape that I need. I can go ahead and put the hidden line that's running through here, and we'll go back and take a look at the drawing to see the distance on that one. Okay, so looking back at this drawing, we see that we used our 213 dimensions. And it looks like I had it highlight everything there. I'll do those 2 dimensions. The next thing I need to know is how high this little offset is, or these lines here. And that's telling me over here that they're sitting at 30. So those are going to be the ones that I'm going to use next. And that's going to create these dotted lines here. I'll locate the center based off the top. So when we ever recreate this top view, we'll come back and put these 2 centers on it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is do the 30 line here. And then we'll correlate this to creating that top view. Okay, so one final offset here. Or I could have used the copy command, but I'm just going to offset this bottom line up a distance of 30. So remember, anytime you use the offset command, the first thing it's going to ask you for is put in a distance. And you can select that distance graphically, or we can type in a number. And I should show you how to do that here along the top when we create this top view. Okay, so let me go ahead and finish trimming this. And I'm just going to use the trim command. And then I'm going to take off these portions. Okay, I'm going to zoom out and pan down a little bit. And now I'm ready to create my top view. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create my boundaries. What I typically like to use is construction lines. So underneath the draw menu, you're going to have the 3rd icon which says construction lines. Then I'm going to use the vertical option. And what I can do with that is I can click these off, these endpoints. And this kind of saves me a lot of time of transposing these lines along the top. Okay, I'm going to create a line here somewhere underneath. Just a horizontal line going straight across. And once again, my ortho is turned on. That way I can keep all these lines nice and straight. Next, I'm going to offset this line a distance of 60. And once again, we can also use the copy command. So offset, it asks me for a distance. Go ahead and type your distance and hit enter. Then select the line that you want and then offset above it. Okay, so one of the commands I like to use is called EXTRIM. And that saves me a lot of time. And I'm going to do it this way and then I'll come back and show you how to do it with the regular trim way. So EXTRIM. Once you hit that command, go ahead and select this line and then click anywhere below it. Then I'm just going to hit the enter button again to take me back to the last command I did. I'll select this line and click above it. Hit the enter button again. Select this line to the right. Enter. And then this line and to the left. So all of that is created rather quickly with trimming, but if you want to do it with the regular trim command, or you might not know this command exists, let me go ahead and undo back to where it was. And then if we use the traditional trim command, I'm going to use cutting edges. And what I'm going to do is select these 2 lines, and these 2 lines as my cutting edges. Go ahead and hit the enter button. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do 1 click here, come straight across, and 1 click over here. Same along the top, 1 click, go right across, 1 click. 1 click here, come down, and the same on the other side. 1 click here and come down. Okay, so either one of those ways will be fine, no matter which way you decide to do it. Okay, along here on the front, we need to go ahead and create a circle. Or you can use an arc, but I'm just going to use a circle and trim it. So I'm going to use the circle, a 2-point circle. I'll select this endpoint and this endpoint. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this, and I'm going to use the grips. So I'm going to select the circle. I'm going to select this quadrant, hit the space bar 1 time. And you can see the word move should appear on your command line down here. And then just come back to where it clicks on this midpoint. escape. And then let's go to trim and trim off these portions. And then you can finally escape and erase that command, that line altogether. Okay, so along the top here, we know how wide these are. Okay, and that width is going to be based off of these two 15s. So we have those two dimensions, and we're going to go ahead and offset those lines so we can get it to go that direction. So I'm going to jump to the offset command, type in 15, enter. I'm going to select this line coming down this way, and this line going up. Escape. Okay, so now with this, we want to go ahead and trim these lines off in these two portions, right? So what I'm going to do now, if you used to selecting cutting edges, and what I mean by that is if you used a previous version, I think like in 2022 or 2021 is when they changed the trim command. If you want to use certain cutting edges, you can pre-select them. So for example, if I pre-select these 4 lines and I go to trim, now these 4 lines are going to be my cutting edges. So if you don't want to go down to the bottom and select cutting edges, you can pre-select the cutting edges and then invoke the command. That will also work the same with the extend command. Okay, so let's go ahead and escape. Let's go ahead and use a circle, center diameter. Let's click this center, and it has a diameter of 22. Okay, so now we have this one. Let's go ahead and put our circles that are located down here. Once again, you can use the construction line, or in this case, I can pull a track off of those. In order for me to do that successfully, I have to make sure that quadrant is one of my running O snaps. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my polar tracking, and polar tracking, remember, is set here. I'm sorry, O snap tracking is set here. I'm going to start the line command. What I want you to do is touch and hover over this quadrant. Do not click on it. Come straight down, and then you're going to see as it starts to track, and once I get close to there, left click. When it gets the X, come down and left click here. You'll also notice that perpendicular is another one of my running O snaps. Let's do that one more time. So I'll go back to the line command. I'm just going to touch this quadrant and try to avoid any of your O snaps. So you'll see me kind of come out this way, rotate around. I get the tracking. Left click here, come straight down. And then I place that line there and follow that with an escape. Okay, so we have 2 of our views created. Let's go ahead and create the third one. So I'm just going to draw a line, and just like I did before, I'm going to track off of this one, come over a little bit, left click here, and we do know how wide this is. So I can go ahead and type that number in directly, and that distance should be 60. We do know how tall this thing is. It's at 50, or if you didn't know that, or if for some strange reason it was at an odd number, you can come and touch this endpoint, come this direction, and once it tracks off of it, it will lock onto that distance. So I can left click there. I'll come back over 60. And then I'll use the C, enter to close the line. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to offset this distance up. Now remember when I said use the offset command, you can choose to type in a number, or you can select the distance graphically. So if I go to offset, I can click this endpoint to this endpoint, and that will set that distance of 15 for me. Select this line, place it above it. I'm also going to offset this line going this direction, and then this line going this direction. Like I did before with the other one, I have a line that's up at 25 and one that's up 30. So I will use the copy command again. Select this line, enter. Pick a base point since I'm moving this at a distance, so I'll click somewhere here. I'm going to go up in this up direction, and I can leave my cursor up in this direction and type in 25, enter, and then 30, enter. Okay, so everything I need to do now is just go ahead and finish trimming this and make it kind of look like the shape that I want to do. So I'm going to use the trim command, and then I will start with this line. So these two lines I know have to come up, and I'm going to walk them back up a little bit more. And that's kind of one of the things the cutting edges does for you. It will help you eliminate doing these steps or clicking so much. So I can come and click these two lines. You'll see that this wraps around this direction, and then finally here. Escape. I know that this circle or this hole is sitting right here in the middle. So I'm just going to draw a line going directly from this midpoint going up to here. And that radius, that diameter of that circle is 22. So we have to offset half of that number. So I'm just going to use offset 11, enter. I'll go ahead and select this line and offset one time to the left. So I'm going to left click here. Come back and select your center line again and left click on this direction. Let's go ahead and erase this line here for now. And now you can see that I have completed all of the shape. Okay, so from what you see is that I have used every single dimension that's located along this drawing. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is go ahead and set up a title block around it, and we're going to be using a manual. Well, I hate to say manual, but that's kind of the term that I'm going to insert this title block on the manual. I'm not going to use the annotation scale, and I'm not going to be using paper space. So I guess it's called standard, but I guess I'll call it manual. Okay. Luckily on this drawing, it did give us a scale of 1 to 25, and we're going to use that to set up all of the other things that's located inside of this drawing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and insert in my title block. Now I'm going to use the insert command. That's I enter. If you're looking for the actual icon, it's going to be under insert, and it's going to be this icon located here. And you should also see it on the home screen. It's going to be this icon here. Either one of those will get you to the exact same place. Okay, so once you have used the insert command, you should get this dialog box. Now, since we're creating a title block, I can go ahead and turn off the insertion point because I want it to come in exactly at 0, 0, 0. Another thing that we can do, if we know the scale already, I can go ahead and set the scale here, but I prefer to show you the manual way of setting that just in case you have to change it, because a lot of times you will not know the scale that this drawing is going into. So we're going to leave that off. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this icon. And you should get another dialog box going to appear. And these are two title blocks I created. I will try to remember to put the link up to the title block or how to create the title block somewhere along in this location. So, but in this case, I'm going to use a B-size title block. And once I select open, you're going to see that title block should appear in your drawing at the 0, 0, 0 location. I'll go ahead and close my insert title block. And the next thing I like to do is have my properties window open. And I know you kind of saw this as I was creating these drawings. This kept appearing back and forth. So, in order to get that to appear, you can type in PR, and that stands for properties. And you can also use MO. That's the one I was thinking of in my head for modify, but it'll bring open this dialog box. And I typically have mine auto hid, and that's going to be this button here. So when I'm off of it, it goes away, and when I come back on it. But it's perfectly fine to leave it open. Okay, so I'm going to hit the escape button twice. I'm making sure I don't have anything else selected. Go ahead and select your title block. And now come over to the properties window, and you're going to see scale X, scale Y, and scale Z. Since we already know what they're going to be, I'm just going to type in 25, 25, and 25. And I know I typed in a big number for the last one, but we really don't have anything going in the Z direction, so that's kind of irrelevant. But make sure that the scale X and scale Y is reading the correct scale factor that you want to use. If you want to take a look at this, this is kind of a handy little chart that I typically will use. So I set my scale factor to 25, And I know it's not listed here, but I'm going to be using this metric scale, and 25 will put me somewhere between here. And it's just going to be simply 1 is equal to 25. So I'm going to go ahead and locate that in my title block. So whatever I set my scale factor here to, typically you're going to this is what you're going to put in your title block. Okay, so once again, I have this title block set, and it's the only thing that I have selected. Over here in my properties window at the very bottom, these are the attributes. So this is where I'm going to type in the scale. And that's 1 to 25. If you have a project name for it, you can go ahead and type that in as well. Just hit enter after each one of them, and you can see that they will locate on the inside of your title block. You can go ahead and fill in the name as well. I'm just going to pan this over a little bit, and I'm going to now move these objects to fit inside of my title block. Do not move your title block to fit the objects. Move the objects around in your title block. So I'm going to go to move. I'm going to do one click here, and then I'm going to use the blue window. So I'm going to come here and click here, enter, base point somewhere along here. And this is where I can go ahead and turn that ortho mode off. And that's going to kind of give me the freedom to move this around a little bit. Okay. I can move this back a little bit, but now once I get it positioned somewhat in here, I will put the ortho back on, mainly because these views have to stay in line with each other. So now when I go to move this one, I can keep that all in line with each other. And then when I move this one again, I want to make sure that those stay straight. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you is how to make these line types show up. One benefit of inserting your title block is that you get all the layers that you have created inside of that title block to come along with it. Okay, so next I want these to show up. The command for it is going to be LTS. Once I select LTS, I'm going to change that number to match whatever my scale factor is. Remember, we scaled our title block up to 25. Make that number match. And now you're going to see these lines going to show up the line types. Remember that we had these two lines hidden. So I'm going to select those two. And this one as well. I will select in the drop down and put them on the hidden layer. Okay. So now I have all of my hidden layers on here. Next thing I want to do is I typically like to do my center lines. So I'm going to come over here to where it says annotate. And then I'm going to be using these center lines. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you that this is a metric drawing. And number two, you want your center marks to come in on a layer that you have labeled as center. I'm going to show you the first problem that's going to happen, and then we'll talk about how to fix it. So on a center mark, if I use a center mark and I go ahead and select this circle, it gives me the center mark. But typically your center marks are going to have an extension that comes off of them. So we're going to use a command to set our extensions for us automatically. So I'm going to delete this. And what I like to do is if I'm creating a metric drawing, I'll set my center mark extension line set to somewhere like 3 or 5. Either one of those should be acceptable. But the command to use that one is going to be called center EXE. Enter. Now, with this number, I'm going to set it to, let's set it to 5 for this example. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do is that I want all of my center marks to come in on the correct layer so I don't have to go back and change them. So I'm going to use a command called center layer. Enter. And the name of my of my layer that I want it to go on is going to be called center. Now, you'll see that when I use the center mark command, that these should come in on the layer that I got named as center. So I'm looking for that color to be this cyan looking color. Okay, so I'm going to go to center mark. I'm going to select my circle. You see the extensions happen, and you can also see that it did go on the correct color. Or the correct layer, I should say. The next thing I'm going to use is the center line command, and I'm going to select this line and then this line, and it should give me a center line in the middle. I'll do that again over here. This line, and then this line. Okay, what you typically like to see on your center lines is a little gap between those. So it should be a line, dash, line, and I'm not seeing the dash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that line and this line, go to my properties, and under line type scale, I'm going to make this a smaller number. Now see what 0.75 does. So I change that to 0.75. I hit the escape button twice, and now line, dash, line. That's going on between it. Okay, and we're almost done here. So one of the next things we need to do is go ahead here and set our dimensions to come in on the dimension layer. So this is another one of those automatic things that'll help you from doing a lot of repetitive stuff. Okay, next thing I need to do is set up my dimension style. And that's going to be located here, or you can select D on your on your keyboard and hit enter, and it will bring you to this exact same dialog box. Let's go to modify, and I'm going to make very minimum changes inside of here. Okay, so now I got this dialog box. Starting with the lines, this kind of controls all of how these lines are going to appear. We're not going to worry about that. If we needed to change these arrowheads, this is one of the places that I'm going to do it. So these center marks, I'm just going to turn them off because I don't need to see those little pluses there because I already have them. Underneath the text, we're going to adjust the text height, which is going to be 0.125. Underneath the fit is the most important one because of this dialog box. If we're using the standard method, this has to match whatever you set your scale factor to. So there's my 25. Then the final tab that I'm going to deal with is going to be my primary units. We're going to use decimal, and we're going to set them to whole numbers. Okay, so I'm going to go to OK and close. And then I'm going to start dimensioning this. So I'll go with a linear dimension, select this endpoint, and this one, come back this direction. Once again, I'll do the linear again. This time, instead of selecting two endpoints, I'm just going to hit enter. It's going to ask me to select the object I want to dimension. In this case, it's going to be this line. And I'll go ahead and place that dimension. Go ahead and place a couple of more dimensions. So from here to here is 60. Another linear dimension from that endpoint to this one is at 130. You'll notice one other thing that I'm doing in my drawing is I'm actually selecting these endpoints of the object, not the endpoint of the previous dimension. So be really careful when you're creating your dimensions. Okay, for a radial dimension underneath the drop down, let's go ahead and select radial. Let's go ahead and place that dimension there. And then I'm going to click it here. In order to get rid of this extension line, go ahead and select the dimension. Come over to your properties. And you're looking for where it says EXT line. That's going to be the extension of it. Go ahead and turn that off. And now you'll get your dimension that will feed back. Okay, escape twice. Let's go back and put a couple of more linear dimensions. So I can put dimensions here and here. A couple of more dimensions. And you'll notice that I'm going to pick these in a certain order. If I want my dimension to be sitting on the outside, I'm going to select this endpoint and then this one, and then that dimension is going to appear on the outside. So if I want that dimension to be on the outside of the other side, I'm going to select the endpoint first on the inside and then on the outside. And you'll see that it will put that dimension on the outside. Now I want these to be in line with each other, so I'm just going to go and select that endpoint and click on it. Okay, let's go ahead and put a couple of more dimensions on here. I'm going to put a dimension from that endpoint to this endpoint. And then let's go ahead and finish off our ones at the top. So they're all linear dimensions. There's nothing really too special about this drawing. And let's go ahead and, like I did before, this endpoint first, and then it's going to be the last endpoint I select is which way it would kick it out to. But this one was able to put it in the middle. I'm going to do this dimension and this one again. And we're going to click that endpoint. And we do have a diameter dimension. which is on this circle here. One of the things I could have done is shown you how to create a baseline dimension, but I'll save that for another lesson. So, because these dimensions I could actually create with a baseline, but there's a little bit of additional setting up that I have to do. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video, just showing you how to create this and do some dimensioning and basic stuff of that nature. In the second part of this video, I will create the isometric, and then we will place it along here. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I know this video has got kind of long, but I appreciate you watching. Thank you.